first time we've done this is that the first 10 registrants or people that have registered are going to get a copy of Edward Shannon's book. Look at the chat as we get into the presentation, and I'll find a link on Amazon and just throw it up there in case you aren't one of the first 10. I've got this wonderful list here, so I'll make sure that the people that have registered are actually showing up, and we'll get this out to you because I have your emails and we can ask for mailing addresses. So this is over a $30 value, brought to you by DGS Architecture. And I've read the book cover to cover, and after being in practice for almost 10 years, you think you know everything, right? But you always are learning new stuff, and it really, there were some great ideas in there that I could incorporate into my practice. So moving forward, let me just read a little bit about Edward and a little bit about the book. So sole practices consisting of one employee represent about 30% of architecture firms, yet very little has been written exclusively for this business model. Can the sole practice model be seen as a destination and not simply a season to beginning a private practice? Edward J. Shannon, AIA, believes so. Written for sole practitioner architects by a sole practitioner architect, the author draws on his experiences of what has worked and what hasn't in his years of operating a one-person firm. This guidebook covers topics such as finances, marketing, tools, and practice types as they are related to sole practices. Written in a witty and personable style, it offers guidance and tools to those contemplating establishing a sole practice, in addition to encouragement and direction for established sole practitioners. A little bit about Edward. Edward J. Shannon is a sole practitioner, SPA, in Des Moines, Iowa. His practice specializes in small projects consisting of light commercial, residential, and historic preservation. He prides himself in being an SPA and sees the solopreneur model as an asset instead of a liability. Mr. Shannon was an assistant professor of architecture at Judson University in Elgin, Illinois, where he taught professional practice and helped the program earn NAB accreditation. Mr. Shannon also established and administers the Sole Practitioner Architects Professional Facebook page that currently has over 1,200 members. So with that, I'll turn it over to Edward. If you have any questions while we're moving forward, just please put them in the chat. If it's a clarification that you need right away or that everyone would benefit from, maybe just pipe in, but otherwise we'll kind of compile the questions for the Q&A session at the end. Okay? So Edward, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, all right. Well, good afternoon or good morning, everybody. One small correction, the SPA Facebook page as of today has 2,452 members. So we've almost doubled since that was written. And it's a great place to just come and share ideas or questions or whatnot. But I'm going to get into this. The presentation is Going Solo, the Sole Practitioner Business Model. And this little copyright law here, it's copyrighted by US and international copyright laws. And a little bit about me. I'm a licensed architect in Illinois and Iowa. I'm a sole practitioner by choice. As Daniel mentioned, I'm a former professor of architecture at Judson University, founded the SPA. SPA stands for Sole Practitioner Architects, by the way. Founded the SPA Facebook group, authored the SPA manual, which is the book he was holding in his hands, and I teach SPA business skills So here's some learning objectives. We're going to recognize various assets, including hands-on creativity and simple management techniques of the sole practitioner architect business model. Explore simple business and financial plan for a sole practice. Discover valuable business tools and systems available for starting and maintaining a successful sole practice. Understand the critical roles of entrepreneur, manager, technician, and how they are best balanced in the sole practice. And lastly, we'll talk about growth methods for a sole practice. Okay, so my first question is, who do you work for? And I want you to think about that. A couple of years ago, probably about 4 years ago, I was at a Christmas party. It was just this time of year, and it was for the Iowa Architectural Foundation, where I volunteer. And an old retired architect came up to me, and he said, he introduced himself, and he said, "So who do you work for?" And I said, "Well, myself." "Oh, how many people in your firm?" And I said, "Well, it's just me." And his y- y- his voice just kind of dropped, and he said, "Oh, that must be really hard." And I was kind of stunned with that. And it was almost kind of like he was having pity on me because I didn't have employees. And I'm not sure how I responded, but how I would like to have responded was actually, designing and detailing buildings is not as hard for me as managing people and payrolls, which is what a lot of large practitioner partners end up doing for a good portion of their day. So, the question is, who do you work for? Do you work for someone else? Maybe many of you do right now, but even if you're working for someone else, I want you to change that mindset. I want you to think of yourself as working for yourself, even if you're not self-employed, because you have to chart your own course, and no one can do that for you. You have to you have to look out for yourself, um, whether you're working for a firm or not. And um, I've been through 2.5 recessions in my career, and I know this profession that we all love can be kind of a messy profession at times, and you really have to look out for yourself. So think of that you always work for yourself. And then next question I ask is, what would happen? So let's just think of some different scenarios here. What would happen if you were laid off tomorrow? You're if you're thinking of working for you, if you think that you work for yourself, maybe you have a plan for that. You're not so dependent on someone else and so forth. Um, uh, Other things that can happen, accidents or health things can happen. But you never really know, what will happen in your life, and as such, you need to take ownership of your career, and and just be that kind of working for yourself. I guess I'll go back to now. I ask, who would you rather work for? Oops. I don't know if these well, I'll go back to that question. Would you rather work for yourself or someone else? So I really recommend everyone adopt a mindset of, I work for me, even if I'm not self-employed. I'm always looking out for myself, and I'm charting my course, which is really important. Um, let's talk a little bit about the sole practitioner model. And sole practitioners, we're going to I'm going to come back to these in separate slides, but I'm going to We're going to talk about sole practitioners in context, pros and cons of the SPA model, and is being a sole practitioner an asset or a liability? The guy who I met at the Christmas party, he was an old retired architect of one of the bigger firms here in Des Moines, or partner. He saw it as a liability. I see it as an asset. So let's talk about sole practitioners in context. Here's a statistic. On average, when the AIA does its firm surveys, about 30% of all AIA firms are one person. Now, this does not mean 30% of AIA members. It just means when they count all the firms, they're about 30% are one person firms. When I first heard this statistic or saw this statistic, I was blown away because I thought, you know what? This is really a legitimate practice model. And yet it's kind of frowned upon. It's kind of looked down upon. It's often looked as like a stepping stone, something that's the way where you start your practice, but it's not a destination. So 30% of AIA firms are one person. And what does this mean? I just said it's a legitimate business model. And there are obviously a lot of architects who are SPAs. It's a legitimate business model, and there's a legitimate marketplace for one person firms. There are enough projects out there that are a good fit for just one person. So, small projects and their clients. Let's talk about pros and cons of the SPA model. Well, the pros are you get to be your own boss. You control your own designs. You don't have to manage people. You have way fewer administrative tasks. You have the freedom that comes with being a sole practitioner or a self-employed person, and you have the flexibility. If I don't have to ask for days off or to come in early or late or whatnot. Let's look at the opposite, the cons. Well, you have to do everything yourself. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. And, one of the things in my book is I say things change toward the end of my book, and I'm going through some changes, but essentially you have to do everything yourself. Large projects can be a challenge. I have one now, and there's definitely a longer delivery time for sole practitioners. And here's one that I don't like to talk about, but if you're a sole practitioner, in general, you may make less than a partner in a 50-person firm. Okay. And I mean, if you really want to, this is a lifestyle business. It doesn't mean you take a vow of poverty, but you need to look at this kind of business model as kind of as a lifestyle. And I enjoy, right before we got on the Zoom call here, I mean, I'm working on some elevations. I enjoy drawing and on CAD, I guess, but large firm principals, most of them don't do drawing. I mean, they may do little sketching once or twice a week, but I enjoy the drafting. Another con is just kind of isolation. My Myers-Briggs personality type, I'm an extrovert. So here I am working alone. I'm very grateful for social media and just some of the venues for that, particularly the Entree Architect community, which my group, Sole Practitioners, was kind of spawned from that. But Entree Architect has a live show every day. I think it's 4 p.m. your time, where you can really, in real time connect with people. Nobody to collaborate with is another, I basically do, most everything myself. So now I happen to like that. I'm, I'm, I like doing most things myself, but that's definitely these are definitely some of the disadvantages. So it has advantages and disadvantages. Um, let's look at this as an asset or a liability. So I've been a licensed architect now for 27 years. I specialize in small projects. I relish small projects. I take them seriously. I know how to do them efficiently. This is one of my selling points to potential clients. Um, I will sell them on the advantage of hiring a sole practitioner for their small project. Because when a mid-size or a large firm gets a small project, usually it's a favor that they're doing for someone, for a client or something. And what do they do with that small project? Well, they usually give it to the least experienced person in the office because they think it's easy and it's insignificant to them. So they get an addition to a house. Oh, we'll throw our summer intern on that project. Now, I've been doing additions and I've been licensed for 27 years. Um, my first 6 years of architecture, I worked for school firms, but I did do some residential. I did kind of the favor projects, for the firms. But in 1999, I went over to residential and loved it. Loved the scale of it, and I take small projects really seriously. I love doing them. They are not insignificant to me, and more so nowadays. I'm going to flip to the next thing. So because of this, when you hire me, this is one of my sales pitches. When you hire me, you get all of my 25 plus years of experience on every aspect of your project. So you're getting a real seasoned architect when you hire me versus going to the little bit bigger firm where they're going to, give this to someone smaller, this small project to someone way least experienced. But I love doing these projects. And I my credo is there's no such thing as a bad project, just bad clients. And that's a whole nother issue. But I love doing these projects for people who appreciate me and what I can bring. So let's switch over here and talk about business plans. Why have a business plan? Well, a business plan gives you something to aim for. Business plan helps identify tools to reach your destination. So it's a plan. A business plan will inform you if you've arrived. So what is a business plan? Now, if you Google business plans, um, you're going to get some really, I would say, comprehensive documents done by professionals for large, corporate types of professionals, and they'll present a business plan as this 30-page document or something like that. My business plan, I can look at it right up here. It's my financial plan. It's one page, and I have it hanging up at my desk so I can always kind of look at it. It's a living document. It's something that changes and grows and gets altered. But a business plan basically identifies who, what, when, where, why. Okay. So, when you ask those questions, who is this? Well, in my case, it's Edward J. Shannon, architect. What am I doing? I'm designing, I specialize in small projects. It may be, when am I going to start the business? I have a date in mind. Maybe it's January 1st, or maybe it's March 1st, 2023. Where am I going to work? Maybe I'm going to work out of my home office, or maybe I'm going to lease space. Why am I doing this? Well, I'm doing this because I want to do it. I want to work for myself. Two other questions and answers, and these are what I'll focus on today, is how you do this. And a real important question is how much. When A lot of times on my Facebook page, but even more so, I think the most common question asked on the entrepreneur or the Entree Architect Facebook is, I've got this project, how much should I charge? And it's profound to me, because I just can't imagine an industry where people really don't know what they should charge for their services. But a lot of times it's, hey, I do, I do healthcare clinics, and now I've got, a condominium project. I have no idea how to structure my fee. Or, I do custom residential. Now, developer approached me about, doing a small shopping center. I don't know how much to charge. So having a business plan really helps you to to grapple with this. And I'll move on to it. So let's talk about how, though. How will you start up your business? And how will you get work? And how will you produce work? So starting up your business, you do need some you do need some startup funds for this. In my book, I came up with kind of a $500 um, template for starting up a sole practice. Now, that assumes that you have a computer and a cell phone and a place to work. But if you have those three things, which most of us have, I show how you could do it for 500 or $1,000, in between that range. In the book, I tell this story. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. He grew up poor in Chicago. He was part of the working poor, and I don't think he graduated from high school, but he went to work for a lumber company. He worked there about 20 years, and he became the top salesperson at the lumber company. And he got into, and he was so successful that he had actually built a small house in a nice suburb of Chicago called River Forest, where there's some Frank Lloyd Wright houses. But he built a kind of a modest house, but he was successful as a salesman. He was the most successful salesman they had. And he got in a dispute with one of the owners, and it turned ugly. And he basically, I don't know if he walked off, he quit, whatever he did. He came home and he announced to my grandmother in 1939 during the Depression. He said, "Honey, we're selling the house." So they sold their house. My dad was 4 years old. He had two older sisters. They moved into an apartment, and my grandfather had his own lumberyard in 1939 when he was 40 years old. And about 5 years later, he was able to buy another house for his family and move back into River Forest. And when my dad was in high school, he was in the 50s. He was actually able to build a mid-century modern house for himself. That's in a former Frank Lloyd Wright, the Winslow House estate. So he built this But I'm kind of getting off, but basically my grandparents, they sold their house to start the business. You don't have to sell the house. This, this business model is very attainable. One thing I'll kind of digress on, and when we get into the financial side of this, having a household budget is really important. Um, my wife and I, we're a blended marriage. We have 4 adult kids. We got married 7 years ago. Um, Both of us had kind of gone through some tough times financially. We were both divorced, and um, we have a household budget. Um, we had some debt when we got married. We had a plan as to how to get out of debt, and we did that. But having a household budget is really important. It's part of the plan. Second, how will you get work? Um, well, you can get work from a lot of sources, but the chances are you may not have projects, or you may have that one project. Maybe that's how you start your firm. You've got, one project, or maybe 2 or 3 projects. But um, knowing the sources of where you can get work, and one of those sources for some of us starting out is that, hey, I'm going to do freelance for other architects. And my story is that, I started my practice in 1999, but I closed it in 2005, worked for a few design build firms, and had kind of a series of misfortunes with getting laid off and so forth during the recession. But when I started the practice back up in 2017, um, one of the things I had to say to myself, hey, while I'm trying to establish my own projects, I'm going to work for, someone else. So I worked for other architects. And one of the things I did was, almost every day the first month I was in business for myself, I had coffee with someone, whether it was a builder, a realtor, or maybe another architect, small architecture firm. Um, so I really kind of hustled to get myself out there. Um, I also I had an advantage this time around because I had a portfolio. It can be a lot tougher if you don't have a portfolio. But you may have to, be very candid and say, well, I've done a certain amount of these projects, but I have the expertise, but I haven't done them myself. How do you produce work? Meaning, how is the other, the other part of that, and that I just alluded to, um, being willing to work for other people, and also just having good systems in place, knowing how to put together, a set of drawings or how to run a project is really important. Um, so now I want to talk to you about how much, and there's 3 questions that that come into play here. The first is, how much should I make? And this is kind of that question that gets asked a lot, is how much should I charge versus how much do I want to make versus how much do I need to make. Now, how much do I need to make comes from having a good household budget. And, if what I did the first 2 years when I relaunched my practice, I said, I just want to net what I was netting at my old job, because I know that works. So I put together a financial plan, and that was kind of like, would I like to make more? Of course I would, but should I make more? Um, well, that's, that depends. I talked about startup costs between, $500 and $1,000, overhead costs, equipment, software, utilities, rent, advertising, professional dues. Some of these are fixed costs that you have to have this. Some of these have, I worked out of our attic for 2.5 years. And some people have nice home studios that they, or night, that they're fine. You don't have to pay rent. But advertising is, don't want to get into too much of that, but in my book, it's probably the most nebulous type of thing, because you could spend a lot of money on advertising and you never know if it's really effective or not. And I'll just share with you, I get calls all the time from people saying, "Hey, I've looked at your website. I can get you way more hits on your website, or I can, I can do this for you." And the first question I always ask the person is, have you ever hired an architect? Long pause. No. Okay, well, hiring an architect, I mean, it's different than selling handbags, or selling whatever. I mean, it's a professional service. I need, I want 8 to 12 projects, good projects a year. I don't want, 200 leads a day that I have to filter through. And, I just want good leads. So advertising is really a tricky thing. And professional dues, insurance. I'm sorry, I kind of got ahead of myself here. But some of these things you need to have. Some of them are kind of optional, but they're all overhead. They're all things that every month there's a cost for these. Now I'm not buying equipment every month, but I have money that goes toward equipment every month, and I have money that goes toward professional dues every month. So this month, when my AIA dues and my NCARB dues were all due at this, I have that money is kind of sitting there from being built up. So how much should I make? That was that first question. Well, how much should you make is a product of two things. It's a product of your local marketplace, and I should say three things. Your local marketplace, your level of expertise, and your ability to sell your services. So when you start out, and maybe some of you are in bigger cities where there's some, and you're going to start off doing, custom residential, which includes additions and renovations. Well, maybe there's a few firms in your marketplace that have been around 10 to 20 years, and they're in that 5 to 10 person range. Do you think you're entitled to charge what they charge? Just, do you think you could look at them and say, well, they're charging X amount per project, therefore I should be able to charge X amount per project? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure about that. So the question, I think it's the wrong question people ask, is how much should I make? Because there is no real set amount. It's really, what is your local marketplace like? Where I live in Des Moines, I've lived in Chicago, San Francisco, and Des Moines. I love living in Des Moines. It's a Midwest mid-sized city, but much different place than San Francisco or Chicago. And, I can't expect to probably charge or make what a Chicago architecture firm makes, or what a San Francisco architect makes. The other thing is my level of expertise. That has a lot to do with it. And then your ability to sell your services. I have been able to raise my fees consistently, particularly in the last couple of years, and that's what happens when you start to get busy. You can start to slowly raise your fees, and you'll weed out the people that don't want to hire you because they think they're paying too much for you. So getting back to this, how much do I need to make is the first question you need to ask. I mentioned a household budget. I think it's really imperative that you do that, that you know where your money's going, that you have a map for your money. I happen to use a program called YNAB, which is the acronym for You Need a Budget. Again, here's the question I ask: can I make the same net income I made at my last job? Well, keep in mind, I may have had a certain salary, but I wasn't paying half my FICA taxes. I wasn't paying for all these overheads. So I need to gross more than I made in order to net what I made. But that was my goal when I reestablished my practice. So here we talk about gross income, salary. Just let these pop up. Gross income is, kind of a product of salary, overhead, taxes, and savings. It's a math equation that I'll get to in a second. And net income is derived from that. I think I have the equation coming up. And then there's how much do I want to make? Well, be realistic and aim high. You should shoot for about 10 to 20% profit. 20% I think is exceptional. And we'll talk about what profit is too. And just realize there's supply and demand can really affect how much you make. So let's talk about what is profit. Well, profit is my gross revenue minus my overhead plus salary, and taxes would be in there too. That's what's left over is profit. So if I want to have more profit, I can reduce my overhead and that'll give me more profit, or I could reduce what I pay myself. That'll give me more profit. So profit is kind of an evasive number. And I think it's a little different for a sole practitioner than it is for a company with employees, where you really, have to, think about, profit as a way to sustain your business. I don't know if you can all read this screen, but it's kind of an example of my business plan. And these numbers, probably some of you may like, oh, that's low. I want to make a lot. I need to make a lot more than that. Well, these are just hypothetical. But here's the low. Here's how much I need to make in this left column. I need to gross $75,000 a year in order to, which is comes out to $6,250 a month. And then my high range, well, I want to bill $9,000 a month so I can make $108,000 a year. But this one on the left is the one that I know I can live off of. Okay, this is what I want to shoot for. But if things don't always go my way, so on top here, I've got overhead expenses, and these two columns look a little bit differently for high and low. Well, the low may not have rent, where the high has $500 in rent. Here's a fixed expense, professional liability insurance. It's $180 a month, regardless. My budget that goes towards license, AIA, the convention, continuing ed fees, $150 a month. Computer software, $100 a month. CAD software. Well, there may be kind of a low end versus high end for that. Books, supplies, and equipment. I'd like to allocate $150 a month because I like to buy nice architecture books. But if things are slow, I'm gonna just allocate 100 a month just for, just so I can, you know, get some printer ink or some paper and all that. Advertising and lead generation, here's another kind of range of 100 to 200. And then a couple of other kind of overhead things. Well, there's meals. I can write off meals or even having coffee. Low end might be 40, high end 75. Could be a lot higher than that too. Subscriptions and memberships, low end 20, high end 40. Parking, Des Moines has very cheap parking. So I can generally, with our meters, get by at $10 a month. So this adds up to total expenses. What I've done here is I've got a low range that's 750, high range that's twice as much. And then I look at my gross income. Here's that monthly 6,250 versus 9,000 minus my total expenses, 700 versus 1,500, gets me to a net income of, in this case, 5,500 versus 7,500. Excuse me. Then I've got income tax that I estimate, which is basically about 20% of that. So 1,250 a month versus 1,800 a month. State taxes, flat rate of 150 versus 200. Retirement savings, 250 to 500. And profit is what's left over of that. This is kind of a dry thing. It's all in my book. But this is kind of the map I think that you need to fill out and this is kind of the financial end of a simple, oops, here we go. What does a financial plan look like? It looks like this. So this is what you need to fill out and need to understand. And instead of asking how much should you make, ask, how much do I need to make and how much do I want to make? Here are just some simple startup costs that I mentioned, the 500 to the 1,000. So there's CAD BIM licenses, professional liability insurance, other computer software, website hosting, office supplies, copier, printer, business cards, and that. So now I want to talk about SPA systems and tools. And I have this thing I say, we've come a long way, baby. A generation ago, I got my Master of Architecture almost 30 years ago. Yeah, 30 years ago in 1992. And the firm I went to work for was, they were about 12 to 15 people. They did a lot of schools. And they had 3 CAD stations. They had a kind of a CAD department. The 2 owners, the 2 partners had car phones. How cool is that? They had phones in their cars. There were 2 senior project architects, or 2 or 3, I guess, that had pagers. So that if someone needed to contact them and they were out of the office, they could be paged where they could go to a payphone and call back to the office. They didn't have cell phones. The receptionist had a computer. Neither of the partners had computers. And I mentioned there were three CAD stations. There was no internet. There was no virtual meetings, so everything was printed out. And so in this generation, we've got all these new tools that are available to us. Now you go into an office and everyone has a computer. Everyone usually has a home computer. We all have smartphones, which is like carrying a little computer on us. The other two pieces of this are, in terms of tools, are, you know, having a workplace, whether it's your home, someplace in your home, it should be a dedicated place, or whether you rent. Um, it's a good idea to have a printer too. Um, I have my printer costs $200. I don't have a full size plotter. I send out for full size plots. I do 95% of my printing on my uh, $200 printer. I do 12 by 18 half size sheets. Um, and when I need to print a full size sheet, I send out for it, which is great. I back in the day, we used to have to pick up the phone and call them, and they would come and pick up a set of Mylars or vellums and make prints and get it back to you. I can send it over. I have a little upcharge in my fee for that, and you know the client pays the expenses for that. Systems, we've got. I'll just bring all these up here. That you need and that are available. Microsoft and Google have some great systems like Google calendars, you know, task systems, you know, things like that. So we can kind of carry everything in our cell phone. Budgeting software, I've talked about this before. That's really a must. Bookkeeping and invoicing. I use Harvest bookkeeping. It's $12 a month for a sole practitioner, but it's basically my timesheet, and it produces an invoice very efficiently that I can email to the clients and they can pay me electronically. When I started my practice in 1999, this stuff might have been out there, but I didn't know about it. So my invoice was just a Word document that I would alter and then go back and then send it out by mail, and then wait and so forth. So we've got some great tools. PDF printer. I've used Adobe. I'm now switching over to Bluebeam. But you know, we do a lot with PDFs. We can send drawings to builders and so forth and clients. So these are some of the systems you need to have. When I say we've come a long way, baby, because you know, from 1992 until even 1999, when I started my practice, there is so much out there that makes doing this a more attractive business because of these tools that are out there. Now, I want to talk about finding balance. And when you're a sole practitioner, there's three. Oh, let me just skip ahead here. Okay, so this is the economics of a design firm. The typical firm, there are finders, minders, and grinders. The finders are the partners or the partner, and the minders are kind of the managers, your project architects, project managers, and grinders are your technicians. Okay. So when you are a sole practitioner, you have to wear all three of these hats. You have to be the entrepreneur, the manager, and the technician. You have to wear I have to be the finder, minder, and the grinder. I look at this as a 60, 30, and 10. It's almost like this pyramid. 60% of my time is is the grinder, the technician. 30% of my time is management. And then 10% of my time is, I'll call it marketing up here. So Finder does marketing. This is non-billable time. Tasks include phone consultations, lead follow-up, networking, Facebook, social media. I try to do paid consultations or site visits. This weeds out a lot of tire kickers. So I have a thing set up where I don't try to sell the project. I try to sell a paid consultation. So I get paid for a site visit. Usually it's not as much as I would make if I was just in my office working on a project, but I know that if these people are willing to pay me just to come out and look at their house, and I usually do, I do a zoning analysis and I have them do kind of a program analysis. So when we meet, they've kind of uh, crystallized their thoughts. I've done some homework, but if they're paying for me to come out there, I know that they're committed, and it's good chance that they're going to convert to a full project. So finding balance. Again, the minder is the management, non-billable time. Again, tasks include map out the work week. So every Monday morning, I have a staff meeting with my whole staff, which is me. And I spend about an hour, and I just kind of go through all my projects. I look at who do I have to call right away this week? Who do I need to touch base with? What needs to be done on this project and so forth. Right now, I have 9 active projects in different phases. One of them just got measured, so it hasn't even started yet. But I map out the work week. I answer emails every day. That's something I do every day. Answer non-urgent calls, prepare monthly invoices. And then there's the production. This is billable time. So tasks include CDs, schematic design, design development, site visits. So how does this all fit together? For me, I have this is what my week should look like. Now, it doesn't always look like this, but this is how I try to organize my week. So I've got management, marketing, and production here. Here's the Monday morning, a little more time on management. There's that staff meeting. Every day, there's basically an hour of management. Every day except Mondays and Thursdays, typically there's 7 hours of billable time. That's what I shoot for. Sometimes it's 5.5 or 6, but that's what I shoot for. And marketing, I try to do on Thursday afternoons. I try to spend 2 to 4 hours following up on leads. And this is the time I schedule. The first thing I do when someone contacts me, I don't take their call right away. I say, hey, let's schedule a phone consultation. I usually schedule those on Thursday afternoons. They're supposed to go for 20 minutes. Sometimes they go a little bit longer, but I try to do all that on Thursday afternoons. I try to schedule site visits on Thursday afternoons. So I try to structure my week so it's not that haphazard. So and I know at this amount equals about 30 hours. So my goal is to get 30 billable hours every month or every week. And I know that there's about 10 hours. Now, this is based on a 40-hour week. Maybe you like to work 50 hours. Maybe you like to work 55 hours. That's fine. You can come up with a plan like this. But the important part is just to kind of understand what your week is going to look like. And do I get curveballs and things thrown at me? Absolutely. This can get upset fairly easily, but it's something I shoot for. So balancing the roles. Lastly, I want to talk about growing a sole practice. There's 2 ways to grow. There's outward and inward. Outward would mean I get more projects, bigger projects. I hire more people. So this is how one, typically grows their practice. They grow outward. I want to grow my practice inward. Inward means I get better clients who have better projects and pay better. Better clients, better projects. It's just as simple as that. That's what I'm trying to do to grow my practice. So I opened a branch office in a resort community 3 hours away. It's where the most expensive residential real estate in the state is. And I decided that if I want to get better clients and better projects, and to me, I love doing vacation homes, but Des Moines isn't really a vacation destination. I'm going to go where they go. Now, this is all new. I just started this in January. This wasn't when I wrote the book 3 years ago, or in 2020. This wasn't even on my radar, but I but I knew I wanted to get better clients and better projects. So I kind of started looking at how would I do that? Um, and I'm not a country club type of guy, so I wasn't going to join a country club. I'm not a golfer, there's that kind of mentality, go where they go and all this. But anyway, that has kind of taken a dent in that weekly plan you saw there, because I go up to Spirit Lake, Iowa, once or twice a month, and it's a 3.5 hour drive, and I stay overnight. So there's some added overhead. There's some time that I'm definitely not being productive. So I have finally, I worked with a business coach all last year, and we looked at different ways to resolve this, because I said, I've opened first we looked at how do I open the office. We did that. And then I realized, hey, this isn't really sustainable. I mean, maybe when I get these bigger projects, better projects, I'll be able to charge more and make more. But I used to be able to put in about minimum 30 hours of billable time. Now I'm down to, 20 to 24 hours. And so we looked at, do I hire a permanent employee? Do I partner with other architects? Des Moines doesn't have a lot of sole practitioners. I think there's probably less than 10. I know 7 or 8 of them, and and I 2 or 3 of them we help each other out. We sometimes we'll do field measures together. Or one guy will call me to do a code analysis. We help each other out. But I looked at partnering with them, or do I hire a freelance person? And I find after months, it took me months to find the right freelance person, because I don't use Revit. I use SoftPlan, and makes it a lot more limited. But growing the sole practice, for me, it's growing inward. It's getting better clients, better projects. And here's your things change. Whoops, things change. Things change. Yes, I just talked about, I opened a branch office. I now have a lady who does about 20 hours work a week with me. So so things do change. Lastly, I talk about, when I asked the question at the beginning, who do you work for? Well, you work for you. And a big part of that is charting your course. And you need to chart your course. And this is just the advice I give to young architects, who I like to mentor. I say, when you're in your 20s, you can explore. So work for a big firm, work for a small firm, see what you like. That's the time to explore. When you get into your 30s, it's time to focus. So you've worked for a mid-sized firm that does healthcare. You're getting to be, you find that work fulfilling. You're gaining knowledge in healthcare. Okay, now how can you focus that for the next 10 or so years, so that when you're in your 40s, you're anchored. You're secure. Whether that means you're a partner in a firm, or you're part of senior management, can mean different things. Did I follow this model? No, not really. And when you don't follow this model, you've kind of missed the boat. And I found myself in my late 40s, and I wasn't really anchored. And a lot of that was due to the economy and so forth. And I was in kind of survival mode. But it comes back to me again. It comes back to me, what if I miss the boat? Well, it's never too late to chart your course. So, I had to come up with a business plan. And, I was 54 when I reestablished my practice in 2017. I'm going to just end on, and then we're going to have some questions and answers. And some resources. There's the Sole Practitioner book, which covers practice types, marketing, fees, SPA case studies. Those are things I didn't cover today. Those are some of the additional topics. Hoping to offer some SPA mastermind workshops in the future. So please contact me if you have any interest in that. And then we have our SPA Facebook community, which is now grown to almost 2,500 people. Here's some contact information. This is the website for the Sole Practitioners. There's the Facebook group, which is called Sole Practitioners Architects, and my website, edwardjshannon.com. So please feel free to contact me if you have any questions, or particularly if you'd like to participate in any kind of workshop or not. And that's it. Thank you. Now.
Thanks, Edward.
Yep. I need to figure out how to unsave my,
Here,
how to get out of this screen.
I'll stop participant sharing. There we go.
You can all see me? Okay.
Yep.
Great. Do we have any questions?
Well, first, let me just go through the top.
Go ahead.
And first, the top people, or the first people that registered is Irina Matulik on. I believe you are. If you could just say, hello, I'm here. Neil Silva, I think you are. This is where it gets questionable. Michael Dobler. Dan Alvarez. There was a Dan in the list, but we don't know if it's Daniel Alvarez. Eric James Barth. Catherine Stiefel. Lan Quinn, I think you were on here. Dorit Trajman, I think you were on here. You were one of the first to sign in. Yep. Krista Benoit, you were on here. Belinda Watt, I know you were on here. Petra Eld. Amy Semis. Let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Christopher Diorce and Brian Horace. Those were the top, those were the first registrants. So if you could, I'm going to put my email in the chat, and just email me your mailing address. I will pop one of Edward's books in the mail and get that off to you. Awesome. So we had a couple questions. First one, actually, that was listed in the chat was from Carrie. Carrie, can you ask your question? It was about salary and profit.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. On your chart, you called out and salary, and I'm just wondering why you do that when there's no one you're reporting to. Like, what's the exercise that you're thinking about, please?
Oh, I didn't hear all your question. Can you repeat it, Carrie?
Oh, sorry. I was trying to ask about on your chart where you broke down your expenses and how you allocated your income. You separated your salary from your profit.
Mhm.
Just trying to understand why you made that effort to separate those two sources of income.
Yeah. Well, it's all yeah. So for a sole practitioner, profit can be a very gray area, because and probably more so for when someone who's working out of their house or all that, because it's kind of like, well, do I need profit? I mean, do I have a retirement account that I'm putting money into it? Maybe I want to put more money in there than I want to leave in this, I call them like the buckets or the envelopes, or so profit can be really, really evasive. I just want to have a goal of setting aside a certain amount of money every month that's dedicated just to my business, that will sit there and accumulate, so that when I have a slower month, there's money to pay for things. If I a year ago I dropped my laptop, it's like, okay, now I'm going to go out and buy a new computer. um you know there's these just kind of unexpected things where I wanted to just have money that's kind of dedicated to the business, and not my household expenses or anything like that, but it's just sitting in the business. Hope that helps.
Thank you. That is helpful.
If I can just kind of springboard off that, I was talking to a colleague of mine. So I just pull money out of my checking when I need to pay a bill. It's that kind of loose. But I have another colleague who's a sole practitioner, and he has a paycheck system through Gusto, and he pays himself a salary every 2 weeks, and he just likes the rigidity of that, knowing how much money is coming in. He also has a family, and whereas I don't have kids and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's the beauty of being a sole practitioner, is you can kind of set your own rules and parameters.
I see a question from Krista.
Let's see here. Krista, do you want to share your question? Okay, well, it appears that you are diversifying your business model with the book presentations and workshops. Can you speak to that decision and how it ties into your business model?
Okay, sure. Well, first of all, I don't think I shared why I wrote the book. And first of all, why is there no, if there's 30% of AIA firms are one person, why is there so little available to them? Years ago, there was a guy named Fred Stitt, who's on the West Coast, and he was kind of the practice guru, and he had a newsletter and he published these books. And I bought one of his books, sight unseen, 25 years ago for, I think it was $105, about being a sole practitioner. It was the only book I could find. It was a typewritten, spiral bound book that he self-published. He wasn't a sole practitioner, so he was not really speaking from experience. He was just kind of sharing his wisdom as a practice guru. I bought that book because I was desperate. I wanted something. So March of 2020, we saw the world kind of close up. And I said to my wife, I said, no, just hold on tight. I may get some canceled projects or postponed projects. I mean, my work might run dry, even though I'm able to go to work and I'm able to perform. And sure enough, I had one big house I was doing for a doctor, and it was just about to go into CDs. And that was kind of my bread and butter for the whole spring. And it was a really nice house. He ended up not just postponing it, but not building it with us. At least he ended up going with a different builder. But that, all of a sudden I had a bunch of other projects I was finishing up. And by May 15th of 2020, I was completely out of work. And I'd heard about these PPP loans and all that, and they were really hard to get for someone who was sole employed. I was with a major national bank. They were no help at all. I couldn't talk to a human being. I'm a member of a real estate networking group here, and I knew two bankers. I had their business cards. The business cards had their cell phones on. Called both of them. They said, "Yeah, we have the funds, but we can't. They're for our customers. So you're not a customer. We can't loan it to you." Um, Gratefully, we started talking about this on the Sole Practitioner website on our Facebook page. So that was an issue, and people had different ideas. It was extremely confusing, but one lady was able to get the loans. She private messaged me and she said, "I've got a bank in Oklahoma that's giving these loans. Here's the guy's email." I emailed this guy in the morning. It was a Thursday afternoon or Thursday morning. Thursday afternoon, I filled out an application. Friday, I think it was $13,000 on my way, which is, um, enough to hold me over for 2 months. And I thought, oh, well, what am I going to do? I've got this money. I'm secure financially. What should I do? So I started looking at kind of side businesses, and uh, there's different. Eric Reinhold has he's got a couple of good practice books that I highly recommend, but his second book was a lot about how to do side businesses. So he has like a plan service. He does other kind of uh, products he sells to other architects and so forth. And one of them was to author a book. So I have had some kind of academic and writing background, and I was passionate about this. So I thought, well, I'm going to write this guide about practice because no one's ever done it before. And I have the time to do it. And so I spent the next 2 months. I do research every morning, and I would do writing in the afternoon. I was able to get some great practice books from my university library that they would overnight to me because I'm an alum. And that's what I did. And I looked at it. When you write a book, there's two things about writing a book. The first is you really don't make that much money, or you make very little money off the sale of the book. It's really a platform to something bigger. So I thought, well, this could be something I could do is, offer workshops and things like that would be, more lucrative. And, I come from an academic background, so it's kind of a natural for me. The second thing about writing a book is that you learn how to write a book by writing a book. And I made a lot of mistakes and so forth, and spent a lot of money that probably, I would spend differently the next time around. But the book was, well, first of all, it was great therapy. Second of all, if I've helped other people, it's all worth it to me. Um, I think I've just about broken even after like 3 years of trying to sell books off Amazon. And by the way, if you buy the book, it was intended to be Amazon Kindle book. It wasn't intended to be printed. So I like it. I like that format a little bit better, but and it's a little bit less expensive to buy the Kindle version versus the print version. But I probably 2 out of 3 orders are for the print version. Which if I had to do it all over, I'd probably format it different and everything like that. So hopefully that answers your question. What has this done to my it's definitely, affected my practice business model and given me kind of a, what I would call a side hustle, as a way to, generate more. And the word I was looking for that I forgot to mention was in Eric's book is passive income. How do you develop passive streams of income where you don't have to produce every day to get income? So this was my way of doing that, was writing a book.
Edward, there are a couple questions I just want to make sure we get to. One is really straightforward. What's the name of the budgeting software that you use? I think your accounting is Harvest, but what was the budgeting?
Yeah, I'm gonna type it in here.
Okay.
It's YNAB. Whoops, I gotta spell that correctly, which stands for you. Oops, gotta spell. There you go, YNAB.
Oh,
You need a
yeah,
budget.
okay. Sorry, I'm glad you typed that in. I wouldn't have.
Yep. Hey, we also, before I met my wife, I took Dave Ramsey's, he's a financial guru. I took his Financial Peace University, which is offered at a lot of churches offer that. But it's a great program. You don't have to be a person of faith to really participate in it, or you don't have to have a Christian faith to really participate in it. He's got great principles. But he offers some great tools, and it's just it's good to be part of a support group, really. I'd gotten into some debt, and that's scary, and there were times when I honestly, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna ever be able to get out of this, and he gives you plans for getting out of debt, and gives you hope. And if you have a plan, that's what's the most important thing. And coincidentally, I met my wife, it was probably 9 years ago, and I had just finished the class. And when we started seriously dating, we kind of wanted to disclose our finances to each other. Well, it turned out she had taken the course like a year before. So we had both taken this course. We were both aware of these principles, and we both had a plan. And we did that. Once we got married, we still had debt, but I think it took maybe 18 months to 24 months to pay off. And that was a huge relief for us. So,
Another
how about
question was,
outsourcing?
well, right before that, I think James had asked something about, so if you have two different office spaces for one person, does that mean you have two sets of equipment, computers? Or are you able to kind of work off a laptop and just
I work off a laptop. That's one of the beauties of
Okay.
where we are. We've got these, I bring the laptop home, I bring it up there. It's a great thing. And is that James Petty? I think I don't
Yes.
see the question, but
Yes, correct.
I
Yeah, hey,
recognize
Ed.
you, James.
It's
Yep. Hi, James.
yeah, I'm
Recognize
also
you
considering
from
something
Entree.
similar between where I normally am sitting and another office in Midtown Manhattan for similar reasons you. That's where the money is. And so it's like looking at also like, do I get WeWork space or open up an actual office there? I was curious how you were doing it.
Well, I was really fortunate to go to this resort place, and I went to, long story short, I reunited with a college friend whose dad lived in this, he was from this town called Spirit Lake. And I was telling him I was looking for office space up there, and I'd been up there a couple times and hadn't really seen anything. He said, well, my dad owns a building. I'll check with him. So he got back to me like within a week, and he said, my dad doesn't have any space in his building. His dad's an attorney up there, but he said he passed along this ad for office space for a small office as part of the suite of offices that the Chamber of Commerce is in. So I called them. I think he sent me this thing on a Sunday. It was, I swear it was about a year ago. It was in December. I called them. I said, is the space available? She said, yes. I said, how much is it? She said, $250 a month. I said, hold on. I'm going to call my wife and I'll get right back to you. I said, is anyone else interested in this space? And she said, yeah, we have two other parties. I said, I will call you right back. Called my wife. My wife said, go for it. She gave me a video tour of the office with her phone, with her cell phone, and I signed a lease. Now, finding a little office for $250 a month, that's probably not going to happen in Manhattan.
No.
But and I think those rework or those office share spaces are a great opportunity just to get you a space there. But but I was able to find this really affordable space. They have a storefront, and she said, you get half of this window. The storefront window is like 5 foot by 5 foot. She goes, you get the upper half for a sign. So I've got a sign out that can be read by people going by. And when I opened that, I signed the lease in January. I got my first lead, my first phone call. And then I joined that chamber. I said, well, if I'm going to rent office space, might as well join the chamber. The chamber put out something about me being a new member. There's no architects, no local architects up there. I'm going after vacation homes. I get a call for a historic, renovation commercial, like a week after I established my office. And I just never, I never thought of that. And, it's the biggest project I have. I am working with another architect who's going to help me with production. We did a feasibility study for them last spring. I just signed the whole design development package with them, but I've got someone who's going to probably do 2/3 of the production with me. So getting bigger projects, if I do get them, we have to get creative on how we do that and so forth. And you're going back to your question. I think, did I answer? I think I answered the question, but I kind of got off on a tangent, as I'm prone to do.
No, it sounds great.
Just to even springboard off that, I have a desktop laptop and a nice iPad, but sometimes I just need the laptop because I follow the sun throughout the house during the day when I don't want to work in the office and just want to change the scenery. So lean into the technology. I think it's a great time to be out on our own, just from a technology perspective.
Yeah. Hey, one thing, James, I'll just mention. So like my setup here at my office, I've got my laptop and I've got 2 larger monitors, and and I've got my whole library behind me, and I'm much more limited when I go up there. I usually have meetings up there, but I might have an afternoon where I can get about 2 or 3 hours of work. So I have to kind of prepare. I've got to say, what am I going to bring up there? I'm going to be limited to just working. I mean, I've got a large HP laptop. I'm going to be limited to working on just that. It is not a perfect situation. In a perfect world, I'd have the same setup as I do, but I'm not ready to, commit to that. And incidentally, now I'm looking at hopefully buying an office space up there, because I found out commercial real estate is way cheaper there than it is here in Des Moines. And it would give me kind of, I wouldn't feel like I'm carpetbagging when I go there. Clients ask, they say, do you have a place up here? Well, no, I don't. Where do you stay? Well, I stay at this hotel. I'd like to have a kind of a work, not a one unit, but like, something with an apartment or something like that. So when I do come up there, I am a resident and I have my own spot, and I don't have to depend on the hotel and check-in time and check-out time and all that. But for now, I always talk about in my book, I talk about really starting off small, starting off with the minimal. And, for 2 years, this is going to be how I start off with that branch office, with minimum. And then if things go well, I'll grow it and expand and maybe buy a property and so forth.
We're kind of at time, but we had one more question here, and it's about outsourcing. How much do you outsource, and what do you outsource?
Yes. So I talked about that. That's pretty new to me. But in my book, I have 6 case studies of different practices, and 2 of the practice models are architects who do everything outsourced. One's a residential architect in California, the other's a commercial architect in Ohio, but they have a group of dependable contractors, if you call them, or, that they, and some, some do design, some do production, some might, I mean, they have it down. So you could, that is a sole practitioner business model, that you do these bigger projects, or in the case of the residential architect, she does more volume, but has found a way to do all that production. As I said, this year, I've got two different things. I've got Nancy, who's ideally supposed to work about 20 hours a week. It's not always that, but she's doing, some production work for me. And then I've got another guy who, on this bigger project, he's gonna do a lot more production, on just a, on that, for that, just that project. I mean, whether we ever collaborate again, I don't know, but he's someone I know, he's someone I trust. I've seen his drawings. He does a good job. So, and I'm going to meet with him Monday to go over his pay and contract. And I'm prepared to offer him as much as I can. I'm going to say, here it is. Here's what I can pay you. I don't want to negotiate. I want you to work for me. So I'm going to give you the highest amount I can. I'm not going to start low and, and negotiate. I really want you to come work for me. So hopefully he'll be very pleased. And, and that's the other, and with the lady who does the work for me too, I didn't ask her, I hate the question, how much, what do you need for me to, I hate putting it on them to tell me what they need to make, because it's a lose-lose for them. Either they tell me more than I'm prepared to pay them, that's a loss, or they tell me less. And then, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I'll pay you $10 an hour. I researched what, someone at her level could make through the AIA salary surveys. And I said, I thought, you know what? I want to be generous because I want her, she's a freelancer. I want her to come back month after month and say, I want to work for Edward because he pays me more than the other guy does, So, sometimes it's just a matter of $5, $10, $15 an hour, but that could mean you get someone who's going to consistently and reliably work for you. So, yeah.
Again, I know it's time, but do you have, I don't know if you have a meeting right after this.
No, I can answer some of these questions.
Okay, so Belinda Watt just asked, how do you prefer working with your clients? Estimated fixed fee up front, percentage of construction, hourly?
Hourly.
Yeah, you prefer hourly. That's pretty clear in the book.
Not every architect agrees with me. I
No,
mean,
I don't agree with you.
it's really controversial. It's really controversial. We've had some heated discussions on Entree Architect. But I find that it's the fairest for me, and I've been able to work that, and there's no crapshoot in terms of how much, I put together a fixed fee for this big historic project. And I spent about 6 hours racking my brain, coming up with the fee, adding hours and, multipliers and all, figuring travel expenses and all kinds of things like that in there. And they came back and they're like, wow, this is a lot of money. This is more than we expected, even though here's the thing. I told them I'm not going to charge you a percentage of construction, but I do use percent of construction as a way to kind of gauge where my fee is. And I said, you have a renovation here. My estimate is that this renovation is $2 million. And for historic renovation, your fee is in the 4 to 5%. So here's what the fee is. Well, right away, they came back and said, no, we think it's going to be just 1 million, not 2 million. Okay, I don't care what you could build it for. common, retail construction, I know from experience that this is 2 million. You may be able to build it cheaper, but that doesn't mean my fee should go down just because you could build it. So anyways, they still thought it was too much, even after I talked to them about that. And I presented this to them last spring, and they had a really busy summer, so they just got back to me. They do a seasonal business up there, so they wanted to wait till the fall. And I came back and said, well, the best I can do is I could charge you hourly, and I'll come up with an estimate of my hours. And my hourly fee, it includes all my, it includes all my overhead. It includes the price, it has all that built into it. So I came up with an estimate. I said, this is an estimate. I've tried to be conservative with this, and conservative meaning I'm going to estimate a little high for you. I'm not going to lowball you, but it's simply an estimate. And it was lower than the flat fee, because when you do a flat fee, you have so many unknowns that you have to kind of cover your butt, so to say it nicely. So, I know I can profit with my hourly fee, and it kind of became a win-win after we signed the contract with them.
Belinda, I think we could have an entire webinar about fee structures.
Yeah, and it's a little dangerous with AIA and everything, because you can get into the whole antitrust thing, and it's a hard discussion to have.
I'll have a chat session at a local pub.
That only applies if you're at an AAA sanctioned event. This is not the AAA.
Oh, okay. Well, I will say that I talk about the different fee structures, and I am biased in my book, because I think a lot of them have pitfalls. Also, I do small projects, and the offices I worked in, they consistently lost money on small projects with their flat fees, because they were it was houses that they did by square foot, or it was some percentage, some amount, and they weren't really good at budgeting. And it was just kind of like, well, we'll make that money up with the larger projects. We lost money on these little residential projects, but we've got this big commercial project. We're gonna, well, that's great when you're, a firm of 10 to 15 and you've got some bigger projects that have more margin in them, but two things really, to me, client changes and client delays really add time to a project. And particularly delays. People can just delay stuff, and all of a sudden you find, it's taking you 4 or 5 hours more this month just because they've stopped the project. And wait, I mean, that can really eat into a fee. And all the insurance carriers for E&O, on big projects, they talk about when a client stops a project, you need to be able to charge them for shutdown time, and you need to be able to charge them a fee to resume the project too. So if it's hourly, it's in there. It's, I don't have to negotiate this. I don't have to, my contract actually says if you suspend the project, you put it on hold, I get paid the rest of the day. I mean, I don't put down my pencil because you called and said stop work. I have enough time to kind of get organized and shut down the project. And then when the project starts up, well, it's hourly, and I can take that time to get my head back into it. It's one of the biggest causes of errors and omissions is people suspending projects and architects not having it in their fee to resume the project. So whether you charge a flat fee or not, or hourly, or however you do it, always think about that these are the things that are beyond your control that can eat into your time significantly.
Great. Well,
Anything
Edward,
else?
thank you for your time. This has been
Yeah.
wonderful. I encourage people to dive into the book, and I think it's just gonna pose a lot of questions, that as we're practicing, that we need to keep at the forefront of our thoughts. So thank you everyone for joining us. If we won't see you before the holidays, so have a wonderful holiday, safe travels if you're going to be on the road or in the air or on a boat. And we'll see each other in the new year.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Edward. Bye-bye.
Yep.